I liked this TED Talk a lot. Riccardi presented things in a way that I haven't necessarily thought about before, especially in terms of culture. And he had a lot of really good analogies to kind of like help me best understand the points that he was trying to make, and I really liked that. The first thing that I think was really interesting was when he said, usually when the first thing you think about when you think about cross-cultural communication is, okay, let's look at the other culture. Like, how can we better understand the other culture? And he says, no, like, let's look at ourselves first and let's understand our own culture first. And I think that that's really important because, at least in a lot of Spanish classes that I've taken, I feel like we've had a lot of conversation about like what culture is and how to define culture and just kind of all of that stuff. But it's like, okay, actually looking at yourself and breaking down, like, what does this mean for me? Like, what do I define my culture as? What do I see myself? Where do I see myself fitting into the conversation? I think is really interesting. I also liked what he had to say about how people see what they want to see and like do not always see what you want them to see, and also how like you can't assume people will see the world the way that you do. I think the idea of the way he defines culture as what's accepted and familiar is really interesting. I had never heard that definition before, but I think the example of the queue in the lines, and it immediately made me think of traffic patterns, because I always go to traffic patterns. I think about like different cultures and just how there's different rules of the roads and different etiquette and how it works. Like, it functions because everyone agrees and the terms are accepted and familiar. So I thought that was really cool to see kind of connect in my mind. Yeah. And then I think to connect it to like negotiation, like past communication, I think like I thought the difference between, he said like different languages use limited words to give a lot of meaning versus languages that use a lot of words to say very little. And I think this can connect to how different cultures can negotiate with each other, because like it's important to understand the different ways in which other cultures like communicate with each other within that culture. And that also just comes back to understanding that we don't all view things from the same perspective or have the same shared life experiences. And I think he says at the end about how he wants to take the three cultures that he feels like he has inside of himself, and he wants to take the best of those cultures to create a new culture to pass on to his kids. And I think that with like cross-cultural negotiation or communication, like the goal of that should be to bring the best of all these different cultures together in order to create something, you know, like where you can actually interact back and forth in a way that works for all parties involved.